intelligent talk that's sure to raise the IQ. Here's Guy Wehman, Ben Brunson, and Frank Vernuccio inside the news.
Welcome back to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio. This is our Picking Up the Pieces segment. Frank Vernuccio, Ben Brunson. My name is Guy Wehman. Okay, Ben, we were just talking about the Teamsters. Actually, Frank kind of teased us into this segment here, and we're going to let Frank have just a minute here, but I want you to weigh in on the importance of what happened with O'Neill addressing or O'Brien. It's Sean somebody. You help me out here, Ben.
Yeah, look, this is the culmination of a long-term trend. And we talked about it during Trump's first term in office. He has changed the Republican Party from a party that represented wealthy corporate owners, if you will, to a party of the working class. It is what the Democratic Party used to be about 50 years ago. We've had a complete reversal. The Democratic Party now is pretty much supported by billionaires and the elite around the world. The elite, the coastal elites, and the people who view themselves as kind of above the average American. And the Republican Party under Donald Trump, and this is, make no mistake, this is Donald Trump's party right now, is a blue-collar, working-class, average American party. And we finally saw the fruits of that with the Teamster president speaking and some other union presidents. You have holdouts in the unions who still, ostensibly back Biden, but the rank and file for unions across this country, especially manufacturing and hardworking unions, as a, distinct from the SEI, the government employees union, the private sector unions are solidly behind Donald Trump. And I think you're going to see some big gains in terms of the votes in places like Michigan as a result of that. If you work in Michigan, to me, this is the easiest vote you'll ever make, voting for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. One guy is fighting hard to keep manufacturing, high-skill manufacturing jobs in America, fighting with his life. And the other guy is working hard to continue this flow of jobs overseas that has been happening for the last 30 years in this country. So it's a no-brainer, and we're going to see it in the polling and ultimately in the results in November.
So you have the Teamsters president here, Frank, just saying after what happened on Saturday, this is one tough SOB. And he said that. And then you have Dana White, this fighter guy, and he says he's now America's new bad A. And I mean, he just comes right out and says that many times on the Pat McAfee show. But the fact is, people have recognized something very special, and he's uniting something in this country that has not been there for years, Frank.
Go back to the union issue. There has been a schizophrenia in unions across America for decades now, where the union leadership is going for the Democrats, but the rank and file have been going for the Republicans. If you look at Joe Biden's day one in office, he put about 10,000 union workers out of work with his pipeline decision. The entire political emphasis of the Democratic Party has been to put American workers out of work. And frankly, they prefer people to be doled out from have their support doled out from the government, and therefore beholden to the Democratic Party. The Republicans, on the other hand, have been pro-jobs. If you go all the way back, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a deceased Democrat senator from the state of New York, talked about how the Democratic strategy seemed to be to keep people dependent on the government and not employed. It was particularly detrimental to the Black community. If you look at all the money that was spent on poverty programs, if you had had tax relief, if you had money spent to create businesses and jobs in the Black community, that would have changed the face of Black poverty throughout the nation and would have ended Black poverty throughout the nation. Instead, the Democrats did a dirty deed. They made the calculation that it's better to have people dependent on government largesse than be independent, so the Democrats, could control them. I think the message has finally, after decades and decades and decades, gotten through. And I think that's one of the reasons where you're going to see a lot of Black votes go to the GOP rather than the Democratic Party.
It is so interesting when they're going through all the various states, and then South Dakota, they're going through that state, and they say, well, you know what? There's still some room on that big rock called Mount Rushmore for another head. Well, they were saying that about Reagan. Maybe they need to put two more heads up there, because both Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, should he get this next term, and we all believe he's going to get that, could actually change America. And I think that's the importance of J.D. Vance, though, too, is that this is a young 39-year-old, and he can carry on the torch after Donald Trump is gone, and there's some strength there, and he's going to have that. He's going to be in there as like an incumbent, like an heir apparent, unlike Kamala Harris, who doesn't even know all their words with her word salads and all. Well, we're going to take our final time out. Ben, Frank, and I, we're going to come back, and they've got their hot button topics. This is Inside the News. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Getting to the heart of the matter. Here's Guy Wehman, Ben Brunson, and Frank Vernuccio with more Inside the News.
Welcome back to our final segment of Inside the News. We've got some insight about what these guys are going to talk about in their hot button topics. But first, we got Ben Brunson, Frank Vernuccio. My name is Guy Wehman. Okay, Frank, let's talk about Elon Musk. And just to kind of get things started, he's going to spend $45 million a month up to the election. Frank, go.
And of course, the intent of that is to avoid ballot fraud. Clearly, if you look at the fact that in blue states, illegal immigrants are being given driver's licenses in some cases. If you look at the decision of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is going to allow drop boxes, which were so notorious in the last election, they are so open to cheating. That is, I think, the intent of that 45 million. It's going to prevent the type of Democrat shenanigans that have been going on for so long. And finally, someone has stepped up to the plate the same way that Musk did with Twitter, and looking to prevent it.
You know, Ben, he hit on something there. Musk stepped in, bought Twitter, now X, and he cleaned house somewhat, and people now, there's freedom of speech. And now with this 45 million, I like it.
Well, it's great. Look, I follow Musk on X, and he clearly has a focus on election integrity. He talks about it a lot on his various posts. And so I'm glad to see him putting his money where his mouth is. And it's the counterweight to Zuckerberg's money that he threw at the election 4 years ago, which in my opinion funded a lot of the fraud that went on then. So kudos to Elon Musk.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do our hot button topics, and we were going to have Ben go first. And Ben, you wanted a little bit of extra time? Go.
Yeah. One of the interesting announcements that came out of the NATO summit was completely uncovered by the press. It was actually a major cooperation announcement. The reason it was uncovered is because it flies in the face of the global climate warming hoax. You know, the one that says the Arctic will be ice-free. In fact, I think it was going to be ice-free in the year 1995 originally. But that pesky Arctic still has lots and lots of ice all over the place. Well, the announcement coming out of NATO was a 3-nation cooperation agreement called ICE, which is the Icebreaker Cooperation Initiative. And it's the US, Canada, and Finland. And it is a recognition that we strategically are way behind the 8 ball when it comes to the Arctic oceans. The US only has 2 operating icebreakers right now. Russia has far more than the US, Canada, and Finland combined. And NATO summit came to the conclusion that over the next decade, between Russian and Chinese resources dedicated to this, the West needs up to 90 new icebreakers built and put in place over the next decade. And now we are woefully short of that number now. So it is a cooperation. It is an urging of Western partners to order from shipyards, either in Finland, Canada, or the US for icebreakers. And it was a major announcement that came out of that summit, completely flies in the face. But when it comes to strategy and reality, you have to put the global warming hoax aside and look at the world as it is, not as the left-wing nut jobs think it's going to be, because there's plenty of ice in the Arctic, and we have a real issue when we don't have enough icebreakers if war or any other strategic crisis breaks out.
Think about that, folks. Global warming, no more ice. We're going to melt the ice caps, and yet we need more icebreakers coming out of kind of flies in the face of that. Frank, your hot button topic.
Yeah, the numbers, I believe, Russia has at least 40 active icebreakers in the Arctic. We have 2 in the United States. So the numbers are ridiculous. My story is somewhat different, and it's one of those that makes your blood boil. Published reports now indicate that illegal aliens were treated at Veterans Administration hospitals, and their appointments were put above those of veterans who were waiting, in some cases, weeks and months for an appointment. If this doesn't tell you the priorities of the Democratic Party, that they put anyone else above our own citizens and even above our own veterans, then nothing else will make you mad. It is despicable. It is a slap in the face of our veterans as much as it is when you see illegal aliens being put in shelters and veterans being tossed out of shelters to house illegal immigrants. It's extremely disgusting. I don't think any story I've read in the past couple of months has made my blood boil as much as this.
And then an organization that is really top notch is Tunnel to Towers, that really supports those veterans, and that is well run, and that is something worthy of consideration. Ben, thank you so much for a great show.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to our listeners.
Absolutely. And Frank Vernuccio, thank you so much.
Thank you all. See you all next week.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for listening to another edition of Inside the News. Join us again next week as we once again go inside the news.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.